Hello, everyone. My name is Christian, and welcome to my hobby blog. Today, I am very happy to say that I am joined by two amazing friends of mine, Amber from Road to Top Valon podcast, and also Laura from A Brick Without a Wall. And today, we are going to be discussing season 1 of The Expanse, which are based off of novels by James S.A. Corey, which are pen names of authors Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham. And before we go too deep into everything, how is everyone today? Welcome to the channel.
Good.
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 So,
Got my
Ready to
dogs. Got my
ready to
dogs.
dive in.
Got the dogs corralled. I'm good.
so I want to know before we jump too deep into this, because this is going to be spoilers for just season 1, none of the books. We will talk about book 1 stuff, kind of how it was adapted, but I want to kind of get everybody's histories of The Expanse and sort of what your introduction to the series was, if you have any like fun stories, just general history things. And I can start if y'all want. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I first saw this season 1 of the Amazon Prime show years and years ago when it was first bought out from Sci-Fi. And it wasn't until the first episode of season 2 that I realized I would much rather read the books right now so I can see how it's adapted and compare it to A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. And it was until last year, so about 4 year break between the first season and me actually picking up the book, that I started to read it. And my God, if you haven't seen the episode with me and Amber talking about the first 6 books, go see that, because I talk about all my feelings with that. But it's been a long time coming, and it was so fun to rewatch season 1 with that in mind, and also with the future spoilers that I know. So
Yeah. My background with it is probably fairly similar to yours. It was in that time after a dance with or not a dance with dragons, but after yeah. After that came out with Game of Thrones, I was just kind of looking for series that were mostly complete. Like I didn't want to jump into anything that was incomplete. And The Expanse came up and I kind of like wrote something down like, okay, I'll explore this further. And I ended up watching the first 2 seasons of it and not even realizing that I had previously looked into the books. And after I watched the second season, I was like, oh my God, this is from the books. Okay, I get it now. And then I think there was a like 4 month period after I had finished season 2 where season 3 was coming out. So like I went back, read the books, and then everything I think from up that point, as soon as there was a new season, I would watch it. As soon as there was a new book, I would read it. So for me, like a lot of the storylines kind of cross in my head. But last year I started rereading the books, and the newer ones I've only read once. Like the last 3 I've only read once, but yeah. So some of them have been read, some of them are have been reread, and then I can't say how many countless times that I've watched the entire Amazon series start to finish. So, yeah.
My only experience before this is the Amazon Fire Stick home screen pushing The Expanse at me incredibly hard. Like that's it. That's the only experience I have with it. I haven't had cable for forever, so if it started on a cable channel, then I probably missed a lot of it. And honestly, I haven't used Prime Video a lot up until the last year. So,
Yeah.
but I really enjoyed it. The first season, that's all I've seen. I didn't get ahead, even though I wanted to.
It really ends on a spot that is just awful because it is ugh, there I don't know why they ended it there, honestly. The next 2 episodes of season 2 should have been included in season 1. That's a gripe that I have.
I've seen like 30 seconds of season 2, episode 1, because I didn't realize that the end of season 1 was the end, because it just didn't feel like an ending, if that makes sense.
No,
So I
totally.
had started watching it, but in the first 30 seconds, I was like, I don't recognize anything happening, anyone on screen, where we're at. And so I checked, I was like, because I'm in season 2, and I just shut it off because I don't want to get ahead of myself and get my stories and my wires crossed for this.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what happens past season 1.
Yeah, I remember because when talking with Amber, I'm like, oh yeah, season 1 has book 1 and 2 like elements in it. But I did
Oh,
exactly the same thing I did, in that I watched the whole next episode, my first watch of season 1, and didn't realize it was season 2. So my entire mind was that first episode is lodged and connected with season 1. And I was texting y'all after finishing the episode, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, why did they do it like this? Like, and I was so mad because I was like, so that is why I've been so confused in my mind of like the timeline stuff. Because I was rating all of season 1 because Avasarala is in it, and she is so much more important in the next book. And we just get such a tiny part of her, and I can't wait for more. But
Yeah,
yeah,
they book 1, the ending of book 1 doesn't happen until the second season of the show. So it's a little bit, I mean, they've stretched things in certain areas and cut things in certain areas. It's interesting how they kind of made a mishmash.
so the book 1 does not end like season 1.
Correct.
Okay, that I think is probably a good thing. I'll be honest with you, like, if I were basing my thoughts about the show just on season 1, the ending was kind of weird for me, and I was like, that's a really weird way to end a season. It's kind of on a climax, but not at the same. There's like so many loose ends, right? Like that are open right now, that I was like, well, it wasn't really as much climatic as more just like abruptly stopping.
Yeah.
That's how it felt in the show. Like season 1 just abruptly stopped.
Yeah.
Put a pin in that, we'll come back, kind of thing.
Book 1 is like all Miller and then the crew of the Rocinante, and that's about it. But book 2 is like the Avasarala book. So it is just, they really kind of like chopped bits up and squished things in. And Avasarala's, I mean, we talked about this, me and Laura, Avasarala's part in season 1 of the show is very different than her book character, I would say. Like this whole beginning scene where she's torturing people, like that is just comes out of left field. I mean, that's not the Avasarala from the book. And I mean, I still hold like book Avasarala like in my, I don't know, in my mind, where like I'm watching the show, but it's difficult because they really kind of just, it's, she's not a nice or good person in the TV show. Like they've made her out to be so cutthroat and just so to the max. Like it doesn't matter what the cost of anything is. Like she is just going her direction and that's it. And everyone else is just a trail of bodies behind her almost.
because yeah, because the way that I saw Avasarala is how I see her in that scene where she's talking to Holden's mother, Elise. Like that's a lot closer in my mind to how I view her in the books. And outside of that scene, she's totally different, and it was so bizarre to me because they're very close on many things from the book, but this is the like main difference for me. And so in my head, I'm like, oh, it's fine if I put in the book stuff, because I'm filling in the holes and seeing how they're adapting it. But I can't do that. I have to separate it. And I'm falling into that trap again of like, oh, it's so close yet so different. And I have to control my expectations. Because I forgot about that intro scene where she's torturing somebody. and she's a villain at that point. I mean, of the show, it's the first 5 minutes, and she's totally different in the books. I mean, it's shocking.
I like that
Yeah.
you brought up the scene with her and Holden's mother, because I think you're like right 100% on that point. Like that interaction, like she's not an evil person. She's just like, let's cut to the chase. No BS. Let's be real here. And in that scene, in that moment, that is very, yeah, that is book Avasarala, I would say. Yeah.
Amber knows this. I don't like her as a
Yeah.
character because of I haven't read the books though. So I've only seen the show. And in the show, she's got like big mood of US national security. That's the mood. Like she treats everything like, you know, national security measures. She talks about how Earth has to come first. And I understand what she's trying to protect, but at the same time, she's still like heavily putting all of her effort into protecting a system that is graphically exploiting humans at, a monstrous level. And she's just like, well, that's what we got to do because Earth matters most. Because without Earth, how does anything survive? But at the same time, like, is there how, like, I don't know. She doesn't consider how it affects anybody outside of just keeping the system intact. And to me, that seems very like closed off from reality.
Since you brought up the like specifically the belters, like there's
Yeah,
a whole group of people who are really like suffering. When you were watching this, like what were your general thoughts on like the different factions? Because the OPA, we have the belt, and then we have the OPA, and then the OPA is comprised of
different
almost like,
subsets, right?
right, right. And it's very interesting like how they've built up like what's like the stereotype of Earth, what's the stereotype of Mars, the stereotype of the belt, and everyone has their own opinions on which other, like there's that otherness factor, like, oh, they're like this and we're like that. And how do you feel about all the different groups? And I mean, what are
I
your general thoughts?
empathize. I would say that I empathize for the Belters' plight. Like, none of what they're experiencing sounds like an enjoyable way for anyone to live. So I can't remember what episode it was in, but we see like the backstory of Fred Johnson when he became I can't remember the ship that he had destroyed, but when he became the Butcher. And it's like you're looking at people who just don't want to be treated as disposable anymore. They just want things like air and water. They want basic quality of life, and they just want to be able to survive and like the basic human necessities to survive. And the things that they're put through in order to gain access to those like basic human needs is disgusting. Like
Yeah.
the conditions in the belt, what they're subjected to. I very much am all for the OPA, even though it has some very radical factions. I don't see how they would enact any change without radicalism. That's just from my perspective. Like,
There's a lot I want to say.
chaos in the streets, ACAB for life.
One thing
That weighs a lot into my perspective. Like me being like, yeah, for the belt is very much in my perspective, like in general.
Oh yeah, same here. And I want to say there's one thing that is really funny for me and watching season one first in the books is that we don't get any behind the scenes on Fred Johnson in book one.
I love Fred Johnson.
Same here.
Same.
Like I think
Love him.
he is just such a interesting character. And that entire kind of behind the scenes Butcher of Anderson Station sequence.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah, that entire sequence is based on a short story that the authors had done. And it's that entire like 10-minute section, and it's so awesome. And I didn't have any of that, so I knew ahead of time going into the books who Fred Johnson was, and I was just like, wow, this is like this is why I love adaptations, because they can pull from these extra writings, and that's why I want the Wheel of Time to really expand and not do one-to-one, because with how the Expanse is doing it, it's like, well, they did a short story here, let's pull that in. They did another short story here, let's pull that in. And it's fine. It doesn't really matter when you read it. And in the show, it makes sense to have it in season 1, because you need that. I mean, he is so important. And I can't say more.
Fred Johnson was a breath of fresh air. And honestly, episode 6, where he's introduced and like Dawes is really, like him and Dawes are both really given the spotlight. That's my favorite episode of the entire season, is episode 6, hands down.
I mean, those two actors are legit heavyweights. I mean, Jared Harris, this whole speech about his sister and like what his life was, it is just so good. It is so good. And this is something that I don't think was such a like kick to the chest. Like from the book standpoint, there wasn't any situation like that where I was just like, wow, like this is just masterpiece of like writing and the situation and the acting like combined. It's so good. But what I love about Fred is like when you get that background, the whole Butcher of Anderson Station, you can tell that he has got a bone to pick with Earth. And he is like, I'm not going to be anyone's puppet anymore. And essentially like sides with the belt. And now he's pretty much wrote off as, you know, a traitor to Earth.
A radical traitor.
Yeah. And it's interesting when the crew is like trying to figure out like, hey, where do we go? What do we do? And they get this message from Fred and everybody's kind of like, I don't know. We're going to vote on it. Let's think about this. And everybody has certain feelings about Fred, which is interesting because from the viewer's standpoint, like when we get to know him a little bit, you're like, he seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders, right? Like he doesn't seem nefarious like the way that the Rossi crew is like hesitant about him.
I can see. Oh, go ahead.
It's just an interesting way that they brought him in that way.
I think that's why I like him so much, is how they brought him in, because when they bring him in, he's like, hey, you can come here. You got to do these things, but you can come here. And then they get there and Holden's like, you know, thinking he's going to grift his way out of this scenario.
Yeah.
And Fred Johnson calls him the luckiest dipshit in the universe. And then he's like, look, it may have been your only choice, but turns out it was your best one. And kind of gives him a rundown of what he is just picking up off of first impressions, and everything he said was right. And I do like, you know, it took me 2 watches to realize that Tycho, like what they're building there, I didn't realize that there was a massive, like, fluted horn statue in the front of this area. And the second time when I saw that, I was like, that's interesting. Like, you know, giant bronze statues in space, whatevs. But I am really excited to see more of Fred Johnson and like learn more about his character, learn more about like what exactly he's trying to do, because he's funding missions that have gone very wrong, obviously, but I don't know, where is he going to go next with this? Like, they nuked the Anubis. That's gone. The stealth ship that the OPA might have hoped to take is done, especially with the proto molecules in it. Like, I don't know. I'm excited to see where Fred goes. I enjoy him. He's really smart. He's calculated. He's tactical.
I loved his interaction with Amos, where he's like, I know men like you. He's like, broken boys, quick on the draw, slow on the uptake. And I mean, I love Amos, but he's not wrong. He is
Right.
not wrong.
Right. Not wrong.
Mm.
I love Amos. He's probably my favorite primary character. Because I would
Good.
say
Yeah.
he's a primary character, but he's probably my favorite one. He's a little bit sociopathic, a little bit sweet. He's got it all going on in there, and I just really find him intriguing,
Yeah,
especially as we learn more about his background.
I'm excited for you to get like more of Amos because his story is great. Like it books, first page to last page of the series. Like Amos is just like
Oh, nice.
he's he's the greatest.
I like Naomi a lot too. Like Amos, Naomi, and Dawes are probably my favorite characters that I'm enjoying right now. Miller's my least favorite.
Kristen's gonna
What?
get the knife in the heart.
Like, here's why. His obsession with Julia Mao feels really unhealthy. Like, in an uncomfortable way of unhealthy. Like, I would understand if he were just obsessed with finding out the truth of what happened. And I appreciate how intelligent and quick witted he is and how he's willing to do whatever it takes to solve the mystery. But I think that that all could have been done without him falling in love with a person that he's never met who's like young enough to be his child and all of that that takes place. Like that to me was a weird, unnecessary element that really took away from his character. I don't know if it has a point for it all being there later on. It could. I don't know. But just like from a viewing standpoint, I was like, that's weird. He's weird. So,
There's
Yeah.
a lot of like metaphorical stuff going on with like the Miller and Julie situation. And I totally like I agree with you, Laura. Like it's kind of like it's a bit off-putting, but I know where the authors were going with it, and I can't really say too much without spoiling the next season, but I do appreciate Miller for like his jaded just like worldview because he's seen like all of the suffering, but he's also the guy who's taking bribes. And I do really like that scene where he's taking bribes and then his partner is like, he saw what happened and Miller's
was
like,
not impressed.
no, and Miller's like, you don't get it here. Like, everybody's suffering. Like, gotta do what you gotta do. And that point is later, like, built on when they're in the Pachinko chamber, like the little gambling place, hiding on Eros. And Miller is saying, like, yeah, when me and the guy that gave him the hat? I forget his name, but when we were little, we used to stick our hands in here and steal the coins or whatever. And he's like, then we got too big and our hands got caught. And then Holden is like, and then you became cops? Like, that's an interesting evolution. And Miller's like, like, do you want to be the boot or do you want to be the ass? Like, he made this choice to become who he is out of basically oppression, which doesn't make it a good choice, but it's a nice way to drive his character that I appreciate.
I keep hoping that like he chills on the weirdness and just sticks to what he's good at, solving mysteries. Cuz he seems to be like he might be good at it. Even though they did kind of imply that they didn't wasn't it implied that they send him cases that can never be solved or they think can't? Is it done because he's really good and might be able to solve them or is it done because they send him cases that they don't want solved?
In my opinion, they gave him this, mission because they know he's the one who will take a bribe. They know that when he finds the girl, daddy will give him the reward and he'll ship her back to somewhere she doesn't want to go. So they just think he's easy to bribe. And it's
Okay.
not so much like,
Skill.
right, right.
All right, yeah, that's just what I was wondering. That makes sense. I mean, that makes total sense.
Yeah, the fun
Who are
part.
your guys? Oh, go
Mm,
ahead.
yeah, the fun part with Miller is that the whole falling in love thing in the books, it makes a lot more sense because you have his internal monologue because he's pretty insular with his like how he gets things done. But when you're watching it on the screen, he's like, "Bam! I'm just gonna do this thing now, and you can shoot me now, Holden, or whatever you want to do, but you're not gonna stop me, and don't touch me again." And I just love that ferocity because Holden, I love him more later, but in season one and in book one, I cannot stand Holden
He
personally.
what a streak of luck. Fred Johnson was right. He is the luckiest dipshit in the solar system. That dude's been ducking death like a pro all season. Also, maybe you guys can tell me, what was Ade gonna say to him before she died on the cant?
The authors have said like it probably like was nothing. Like it wasn't I love you. It was probably just like they didn't have anything really in mind for that. She wasn't going to say like I love you, Holden. It was probably just something like
That's not what I
I don't
thought she
know,
was gonna
random.
say. I thought she had like actual info to tell him or something like,
I
hey, I
think
gotta
it,
tell you this really quick before I die. And then,
I think it was
she,
more of like a plot pusher for Holden. Like he thinks
ah,
she was going to say something really important like I love you, and this is driving him to seek out what happened.
I got zero impression that she would say that from her role, like from her scenes that she had, zero impression she was gonna say, I love you.
Right,
I felt like she would have something like data wise to tell him, like,
right.
hey, you need to know this.
Speaking of the Canterbury, do you care if we talk about like the whole plot of them being picked up by the Donager and like just getting like scooped up out to sea by this massive Martian, like the what is it, their flagship? Because I think that's my favorite part of season one, just from like watching it so many times. I know a lot of what's going to happen, but every time I go back to that scene, I'm like, oh, yeah, like here comes the action. And just that scene, they're on this little, I don't know, they just took this little ship to leave the camp to go check out the
It was just
beacon.
a shuttle, right?
Right, right. Like just this tiny little thing. And the way that it looks when they just get like picked up by this massive Martian ship, like I love the reaction of every character, especially Shed, which got to give a shout out to Shed because he was here quick and gone
He
even
was fun.
quicker.
He was fun. I liked him.
But I loved his sheer panic where like we have Amos's mindset, and Amos I think is just like I'm dead and I don't care. Like I'm gonna take like three of them out with me. Like Amos is resigned. He's just like, this is it. We're done. We're done. They just think that we're, I don't know, like terrorists. And Shed is like talking to people and he's like, I knew a Martian once and like she was beautiful, intelligent, and blah blah blah, and just like blabbering. And I think it's so realistic because if I put myself in that situation, like I would just word vomit. Like I don't know what I would have said. And then and then Alex, they put him in like full regalia and they see him and they're like, did you switch sides? Can I switch sides?
That was one of my favorite. When he said, can I switch sides? I was like, word, that'd be me, Shed. That would be me
Yeah.
too. Can I switch sides? Do you have a place for me here? I'm very, very fluid. Like,
Right.
This was the part of the book that I fell in love with the series because it really highlights each character. Each character has that scene with a one-on-one sitting down with another crew member, and we just really get the opinions and the philosophies and ideals and everything. And I just loved. There's so much to Amos that you can kind of see, but you don't know really anything right now. But with my knowledge of what happens later, I'm like, so focused on Amos because he's always been a character I related with so well because he's very quiet. He is very protective of people he loves. I mean, my God, he's about to shoot Holden in the face and has zero qualms about it in order
I
to
wouldn't
protect
either.
Naomi. Yeah, and that moment early, I think it's episode 2 or 3 after Holden sends out that uh, distress signal saying like Mars is bombing everybody here. Start war now. Remember the can't. You know, all these really and just crazy events that are gonna keep reverberating through the entire series. After that happens, everyone's like, "Hey, Holden, how about we not do that? Don't send anything else out." And Naomi's sitting there, and she's just like, "Nope, locked it." And he gets up and is about to do something, and you see Amos in the background. You just see him kind of rise up, and is about to like jump in to make sure that his XO does not get hurt by this crazy guy who's just doing whatever he wants and telling everybody everything. Like, this is why I don't like Holden, but it makes sense now. But
I don't like Holden either.
Nobody likes Holden.
No, he's annoying. He's annoying. Like, he just gets on my nerves.
He gets better, but yeah,
Well, that's
I think,
good.
I don't know. That I really enjoy the interactions between each member of the Rocinante when they're being interrogated. And it's nice to see like how I love how Lopez is like trying to play each and every one of them, but he knows they're all telling the truth. So like you see the Martians like scrambling, like what do we do with this information? Like they're at a point now where it's like, okay, like who's the patsy gonna be? Like who are we gonna put this on? And then before they can get any further, it's like, oh no, like just the stealth ships arriving and like wreaking havoc. And I don't know, I really love Lopez. Like he got him off the ship. I love that Holden was so, I mean, obsessed with like making sure he got everyone of his crew off. And like he even like dipped out on everyone when like that little moment happens and there's a shootout. But like, I don't know, like I like the whole escape from the Donager where they just like
That was good.
blast off. I don't know, like in season 1 there's not enough of these like big ship battles, and like that's kind of the only one that we get. But that's one of the things on this show that I always really loved was like the visual aspect of seeing that, because in the books it's like I don't know what that looks like in my head.
Oh, yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Also, like what you're talking about right now was, I say, probably one of the few moments in which I really liked Holden as a character, like where you were talking about how he made it a priority to not leave his crew behind. He was like, this is non-negotiable. I'm taking these people with me. I did like that. That was cool of him. It gave him points.
Holden .1.
Holden .1.
I just could not stop laughing when he turned on those alarm sirens and the red lighting is like hitting him and it's like wait, the sirens are going off, and he's like, all right, everybody, Maz just shot everybody, and like just watching it happen, everyone around him is freaking out. They're like, what do we do? Do we shoot him? And Amos is like, yeah, I'll shoot him right now. And Naomi is like, what do I do? And Amos is like thinking about punching him. Or no, Alex is talking about punching him. I mean, I just love that moment. I mean, because we get a little bit of that in the book, because it's kind of like first person, non-omniscient, I think they call it, where you don't really get the feelings of everyone else from the POV. And you only focus on Holden, and we don't get that in the book. And so that was one of the like most fun adaptations I saw from the book, was just that moment where Holden's like, all right, I'm doing this thing right now. And everyone's just, hell just erupts.
I think actually my favorite moment from the first portion, like especially when they're on the Donager, is when, I can't remember who it was says this to Shed, but they're like, well, they told me that you are actually qualified to do this job, that you were just on the run from a drug dealer. And he goes, well, that's true.
I love Shed so much.
I was like, okay, well, I can see why he's so quick to believe what's going on with everybody else, because they were giving out real information about these people to make them look bad to their crewmates. And everybody's starting to realize, like, oh my God, I don't know anything about the people I'm here with. But everybody's also like kind of cool about it. Like, I mean, well, we're in this together. So, but he was like, it's true. I have no knowledge. Like,
so yeah, like everybody on the Rocinante has like a dirty little secret, kind of like they're legitimately on the Rocinante for a reason, or not the Rocinante, on the Canterbury.
is Naomi's secret as good as she takes the burden on for? Because she takes a lot of burden on for her secret. She's very cloak and dagger about it. Now she's trying to wheel and deal with Fred Johnson. Like, what's her secret? You don't have to tell me. I'm sure I'll find out. But I'm just hoping that it lives up to the hype that's going into her secrets.
Christian's hiding his face.
You'll be happy.
Is that like a weird thing to say, that I hope the hype lives, like, I hope that the secret lives up to the hype?
It does. It does. Okay. It's
I think you'll be fine.
I do. Yeah. I appreciate how Amos barely has secrets. Yeah. I mean, he might, but like, well, when I say that, I mean, like, it doesn't seem like he's obviously trying to hide or run from anything. He's just like, because he talks about how he grew up and the type of lifestyle he's lived in. And the scene in the hotel at the end where Amos is or like in the bars in the end of the season where he's telling Alex about how he grew up, and then later on when they're in the Blue Hotel, I can't remember exactly. I should have written it down because all I can think is the Blue Hotel at the end. And he talks about, like, and you can see him just looking around and assessing the situation, and he knows what's up. He's like, this is getting weird. This is getting sketch and sus. I feel like they wouldn't have. I feel like they wouldn't have made it as far as they had without Amos. If you took him out of the equation, I'm pretty sure there would be a couple times where at least Holden would die.
That exact moment that you're talking about is one of my favorite moments in the entire like first book, because it's all from. It jumps between different points of view, but when we get to Miller's point of view, he's literally sizing up every single member of the Rocinante, and all of his intuition, everything that he thinks of each person is like right on the money. And I mean, Naomi, he's like, she's obviously like incredibly intelligent. And when he sees Amos, he's like, okay, like, out of all the people in the room, Miller and Amos were the first ones to react. Like, they both had that situational awareness that nobody else did, where like Alex is just like bumbling around and Holden is like talking to the guy at the counter and just kind of like, oh, this is weird.
I mean, Amos jumped in and saved them and got that information because he was like, it's a special friend. And the guy was like, oh, got it. Now I'll get you the info.
Right.
Because they were getting nothing otherwise. They didn't speak the right lingo.
Right. It's just, that's one of the things that I feel like Show Miller is not as good as the books on, because without like all of his internal thoughts, like you don't really catch like how brilliant he is. And he really is. He's just an alcoholic and really jaded. So like you don't really like see it as much on the show. But I think they do a good job of like his characterization. It's just really hard without his internal monologue of like how he's picking up on these people like immediately. Like he can read people.
I don't think there's any doubt, like, from the show that Miller's super intelligent by any means. Like, there's a lot of ways I appreciate his character, but like I said, it's just that like unhealthy
The Julie
obsession.
thing.
That unhealthy obsession is like a big red flag for me where I'm like, that feels really unhinged.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that
I
I want to add is that all of these characters have some red flag, and that's sort of
oh
the
yeah.
adventure of the books for me, is watching each of them slowly get better. And I'm trying not to be spoilery, but some people really do get better and address the issues, and
Well, that's cool.
that's
That's
it's
cool.
very refreshing. I'll say that because I mean, throughout the books, I've texted Amber like, "Oh my god, this person's so lame. I can't stand them." And by the end of the book, I'm in love with them, and that's how it is. And with how the season ends, we don't get that resolution that I'm so used to. So that's why it's so weird for me looking at this series, because I'm like, yeah, I understand, exactly why. 10 minutes. I know exactly why Miller is the way he is, and I'm tolerating Holden, and I'm tolerating uh, somebody else, but like I just want more like of that final few percentage of the book to be in season one and not in the beginning of season two, because
Yeah.
it just ends so well, and yeah, and we don't get that.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's really like a little prologue. I mean,
That's what this
this
season really feels like, is a
this
prologue.
season feels like a story building season. Like this is setting the stage for where the show's going to go next, but without this like first season of environmental storytelling and world building, it would be kind of hard to just jump in on a really complex story like this because I have a million questions.
ooh,
Like,
ask some, tell us some.
I need to know everything about the proto-molecules. Everything. I need every bit of information about them. I'm just terribly fascinated by them. That's actually the most fascinating thing in the show for me.
What do you think? Like, do you have any idea, like any guesses what it might be?
Okay, so it seems to be a parasitic organism that feeds on that needs like a power source to feed on. Otherwise, it's going to go dormant because it doesn't necessarily look like dormancy kills this prototype. Like in the shower, they are taking samples off of her well after it has not been exposed to any sort of power source. But now they're testing it on the humans and Eros. Like, it's all I can think about is that part of the storyline. I need to know everything about it. I just like the science of it, honestly.
Any ideas, like who the people behind it are? Like what the
Well,
motivation is?
we see that I don't remember, I don't know Julie Mao's father's first name, but Mr. Mao,
Jules, yeah.
Jules Mao, was, I saw like a phone call. I don't, maybe I got ahead. I
Nope,
might have,
you're right. You're
okay.
right.
I saw a phone call and he was talking about something. And then who was it? Dresden was in the hotel room in the bathroom taking samples off of her. And then he's like giving that weird, creepy old man monologue where he's like, she's going to make her father so proud. You're being weird, bro.
Yeah.
Like, look at her right now. Look at what happened to her. Like, there's crystal growing out of her eye and her mouth. Like, what is the prototype? Is it like an energy source? Is it a bioweapon? I don't know what it is. I need to know. I want all the science about it. I hope we go into more of it.
Yeah,
I hope
that's
it's I hope it's not I hope the like that doesn't become an afterthought in the story because I'm going to be really upset.
I think once, like, sadly, like a lot of that gets answered.
As long as it's answered, we can move on and I'm fine.
A lot of it gets answered,
Okay.
but like I think like the big like overarching questions about it, like what are we using this for? Why do we have it? It's something that's like last few books
Is
kind
it
of.
like, I also want to know, is it like an alien life form? Was it lab created? Is it a bioweapon? Like I said, I got a million questions.
You'll get some, yeah, you'll get some of the answers in the next season.
It's been interesting holding myself back from watching season 2.
I know. I'm just saying, like, I'm excited when this is over so I can just go ahead and like continue.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm probably gonna watch season 2 tonight. I'll start it tonight. I'm excited. I
Yeah.
don't have any predictions though, because there's so many loose ends right now. All I have is questions. Does
Well,
that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, fair.
Yeah, I
yeah.
don't have predictions for season 2. I'm just ready to like slice in, get into it, give me the data I need to know.
Well, one quick prediction that I want to hear is, what do you think Avasarala's role will be in the story? Because she somewhat knows Holden after talking to his mother. But, like, what's her goal, do you think? What is she up to?
Well, I think that her ultimate goal is to keep things kind of how they are. That way, resources keep being brought down out of space into Earth and Mars and wherever they're going. But I'm just not like, I'm not a big fan of her character, so I hope that it kind of like shifts course. I hope that she's not so like nationalism above everything the whole time. I hope that that's not like her personality. And I feel like she's incredibly intelligent, probably way more so than Miller. Like, honestly, she does come across as more tactically intelligent than Miller is. Like, she reminds me more of Fred Johnson. So I'm hoping that, like, as we get into the story and see more of her perspective, because we didn't get to see a lot of it. Like, she does seem like a really cool grandma. I will say that about her. And her styling on point. It's a 10. But her personality, I'm kind of take it or leave it with. But it is season 1. So I'm not going to like commit to disliking people. I will commit to liking Amos and Naomi for right now. And like Fred Johnson and Dawes, I'm very committed to enjoying them. But as far as like the characters I don't enjoy, I'm very interested to see and where, because this is just season 1. And it was very much just like world building and story background building. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Her character, though, I wonder if she overthrows her boss at some point. That seems like something that could definitely happen and that she would be very skilled in doing. I could be wrong. There's my prediction. She overthrows her boss.
Well, it's funny because you brought up Anderson Dawes, and I'll be honest, I had zero interest in him in the books. I did not care about him, and I didn't even recognize who he was when he showed up. I was like, who is this Scottish man? And I got his name, and I was like, that's him. I was like, that's Anderson Dawes. I'm like,
Scottish man?
I'm like, this is totally different from the book. Like, I've
Is
always
he different?
Yeah.
He's very different, very, very different.
Book version is like this spindly, like
Mr. Burns?
shadowy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice. I don't know if I'd enjoy that as much, but he's very enjoyable in the show.
Yeah.
He
I
seems
vastly
very
prefer
much
him in the show.
Yeah. He seems cool in the show. Is Fred Johnson cool in the books? Don't break my heart.
Yeah, he's great.
He's
Great.
awesome in both. I'll say that. Okay, so with that in mind, now we can watch season 2. And I've only seen the first episode, and beyond that, I have zero idea what happened. So, thank you both for joining with me today to talk about season 1. This was so much fun.
This is great.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yep. And thank you everybody for watching. Please like the video, favorite it, send it out to everybody you know, and please have a great rest of the weekend.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.